Gentleman from Minnesota for his vote for that farm bill. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Gibbs, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I know this is a little bit out of your area, but I want to see how you weigh in on it. Earlier, the EPA released raw data to certain groups dealing with livestock operations, their business and personal information. It was the raw data. And I know that the associations out there are really concerned about that and potential for harassment and intimidation, whatever. Did you, in your capacity, weigh in on that to the EPA, expressing your thoughts, or make sure it doesn't happen again, or where do you stand on that?
We know that EPA has taken this issue very seriously, as they should, and we have indicated to them the concern that you've expressed, and that has been expressed to them by various groups. And I think that they realize that this is something that probably shouldn't have been done.
Okay, so you express your strong opposition to that type of action.
Well, we expressed a concern, as we always do, when we have a relationship with the EPA when we see something that they're considering or doing that we think may have an impact on rural America. It's our job, and we have a good line of communication. They just recently hired someone from USDA to be their ag liaison, Sarah Biddleman, who worked in my office, so we will continue to have a close relationship with them in terms of being able to communicate concerns or advice.
All right, I want to move on. Of course, I'm one of the strong believers that we need to have a safety net program, and I think crop insurance is a good vehicle. I was wondering, some of the opponents of crop insurance, were claiming the claims might reach $40 billion in 2012. Do you know what the indemnities, the claims were?
Well, at this point, Congressman, they're a little over $15 billion.
Okay.
I don't know that the books have been closed on this, but it's probably a pretty close estimate.
On average, over the last 10 years, how much premium was paid in compared to the indemnities that were paid out? Do you know what the ratio or?
Well, I think the ratio is probably 2 to 1. For every dollar that was paid in premiums, there was probably $2 in indemnity payments out, somewhere between $250 million billion and 500 million.
Okay. I just want to talk a little bit about farm credit. We've seen, I think 2011 record net farm income in 2012, even with the drought, estimated to be the second highest ever. What kind of default rates as a Farm Service Agency are they seeing under the loan programs in this past year?
Past year, the default rates were down a little bit in the direct programs. The previous year, they were 6.3% default, or 6.5% this year. 2012, they were 6.3%. On the guaranteed program, the default rates in 2011 were 1.3%, and in 2012, they were 1.14%.
There's been, in the press, I think they're concerned that maybe farm income were in a bubble. Do you see the potential for a farmland bubble, or moving forward? Or
I'm with the chairman on this. You always have to be cautious about this, but I think this is different than the 1980s, when the debt to asset ratio was significantly higher than it is today. There's quite a bit of equity that's built up, and I think we're not quite in the same circumstance we were in the 1980s, but. Obviously, the land price issue is one that concerns me for this reason. It's more difficult for beginning farmers to basically get into the business or stay in the business, and that is an issue because of the aging nature of farmers generally.
And the high capital cost to get into, right?
Correct.
Yeah. What's the status of the MAP and programs for, we work with our Grains Council and wheat growers for exports, and the FMD program?
Well, both the Market Access Program and the FMD program will receive reductions as a result of the sequester. I would estimate somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 to $15 million in those programs. Every dollar that we use to promote trade generates about $35 in trade activity. So if we reduce those resources, obviously that's going to have an impact on trade, but we're still looking at a record year for exports.
For this year, the direct payments and acre programs, what's the status? What percent cuts would you be looking at, do you think, in the sequester?
Well, I'm not clear about that, and the reason I'm not is because we're still in the process of trying to figure out precisely how this all works with the CCC and whether or not there's any degree of flexibility. Part of the challenge that we have with sequester is that some accounts we've already paid money out, and the question is, do you have to ask people to return the money that you've paid to them, or is there a way in which you can avoid that disruption? and we're still in the process of trying to figure out precisely what we can do. But I would anticipate and expect that there will be a slight reduction, but we're still on track. The sign-up is taking place on both of those programs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.